The following video is a recorded session from November 5th, 2022 at the ISSS, the International Society for the Systems Sciences. The session is called Making Sense of the Systems Landscape, and it describes two ongoing projects at ISSS, education and knowledge engineering. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining. This will be an interactive 45 minutes. I'll start with some context and share some recent updates from my role at the ISSS as the VP of Education and Communication. And then there will be time for people to raise their hand and add some points of discussion, to add comments in the chat. And there will be a single goal, which is to make sense of systems. And that will be accomplished through what we think and how we update what we think, and also what we do. So I hope to engage some of you in potentially contributing to one of the projects that we'll discuss today on the education or the knowledge engineering front. So I was asked just for a short introduction. Hopefully I'm an appropriate facilitator for making sense of systems, as I don't have sense of systems. And so go in with an open mind, and especially in a role of education, try to create systems that will enable others to be making their own sense. I've been involved in systems and complexity and related areas since around 2015, and have been in the ISSS for the last several years, and more recently in the VP Education role for several months. And in this first part of the presentation, I will share the workspaces for the education and the knowledge engineering projects at ISSS. And these are two complementary projects. We can think about knowledge engineering as how we organize our informational niche and environment, and then education as what we do with it and what paths are constructed and curated through those knowledge engineering or knowledge engineered artifacts. So please feel free to raise your hand. I'll be looking for that and for any thoughts or questions in the chat. I'll begin with just showing some highlights from the ISSS bylaws. I know, thrilling weekend reading. We all were reading it, but I highlighted some pieces. And it is clear that education is central to ISSS and to the systems field of learning and application. Many of us, if not all of us here, are total lifelong learners and life-wide learners, and hope to catalyze the same in our professions and in our personal lives. So it's one of the reasons maybe why we resonate with ISSS and join events like this, is because we love to learn, we love to teach, and we love systems. And that's reflected within the ISSS bylaws. So as I was making sense of systems, and continue to do so, but in this new role, the first place that I looked was to the ISSS bylaws to understand exactly how many times education comes up in those bylaws, and exactly what kind of a society that we're in that really values and scaffolds our own continuing development and education in systems, as well as looks outside of ISSS, because we are not a monolith. We are not a monopoly on systems. And in fact, there's a lot of permeability, and that's one of the amazing aspects of our field. So this is the CODA platform, and anybody who likes to have more access to these platforms, just let me know. The best way to get in contact is to email education@isss.org. And that will always go to either me or the person in this role. So that will be like your 1-800 systems education line. The way that I began on the education front several months ago, and then I'll share similarly for how things began on the knowledge engineering front, was by sending out an email to the ISSS membership and also to communicate with other colleagues in systems fields through email and through social media, so-called platforms. And I asked several open questions about what people were seeing in systems education and about what they thought the ISSS could be in terms of a excellent systems society in this modern age, and also what we could be for our own members and what we could be for beyond our own members, and received many dozens of excellent responses and digested them in some sense into different aspects of education. This role and this document is just a coordinator. There's so many last miles to actually construct, so many ramps to actually jump off of, and people's lives to actually impact. So hopefully this work that I'm showing today on both education and knowledge engineering sides are understood as a blueprint. If that, it's on the path towards what we want to do. But this is a very preliminary structural layout that is going to require many people to step up in their own ways to actually embody these kinds of impacts. So with the dozens of inputs, which I won't show here, I generated different categories that reflected areas of interest that people were one or more time being addressed. And so I'll just read those single word kind of cues or call signs for these different areas of education. And we can add more today. Videos, web, research, adventures, applications, bridges, consulting, crises, games, health, intergenerational mentorship, participation, platforms, projects, readings, SIGs, symposia, trainings, visualization, and youth. And we can develop each aspect and initiative, and then try to understand which initiatives and which projects can start to claim some of these aspects of education. So for example, in the knowledge engineering project, which we'll go to later, we're exploring the videos and the web aspect, as well as others, but just trying to make sense of the systems landscape in terms of all of these different aspects of what systems are and can be, ranging from the most initiatory educational experiences to the most advanced research experiences, and on another continuum or manifold, the most fun and playful times that we can have to the most serious applications and crises that we all know systems is needed to address. So the way that we have our regular meetings, which are about every 2 weeks, to give an example from just recent meeting 4, just a couple of days ago, there's often a pre-meeting video that is posted. And in the chat right now, I'm just posting, these are the playlists for both education and knowledge engineering. And so often a short pre-meeting video is posted that catches people up on what the agenda will be for that meeting every 2 weeks. And then in most cases, the meeting is also recorded and available on those playlists. We have space and time for open discussion. We explore different topics depending on who's there. And so even if somebody just drops in like one time, it's incredibly important and valuable. So we just go through all different topics and try to document so many of these threads by way of making sense of the systems landscape. And then we get to the agenda. And in the agenda, we review different educational initiatives that people are bringing awareness or attention to. We touch on different aspects, which I just showed, that table of the words. And then we also have some more particular modular tasks that one or more people might want to engage in. Like, for example, Len Troncalli has made an amazing amount of educational material. So it was a task for several weeks, like to view several videos and to document them. And so then I was able to complete it, but then somebody else, maybe they have not completed that task. And so once somebody else does that, then they can kind of join in the fun and the discussion and also add their own highlights and understanding to what the content is. And these bi-weekly meetings are not at a rhythm or intensity. Yes, thank you. Len gives a talk next week. That's very exciting. Not at a rhythm or intensity where we're going to be coordinating like the construction in these sync meetings of systems content. And in fact, we don't have to, because there's so much amazing materials that ISSS members and beyond create. And so actually, we are right now very much engaged in making sense of systems landscapes, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to invent a square wheel unless we're going to be doing some staircase rolling. And we want to do something that is appropriate. We want to respect the long history of decades of research and education synthesis in systems, which actually, to kind of hinge on that topic and take us to knowledge engineering, in some of Len's videos, he highlighted decades of education reports from the history of the ISSS. Many of them may only exist as printed documents in several locations. So he brings up how we repeat the frictions and errors of the past when we don't have better situational awareness into the systems landscape. If we keep being dropped into different aspects of the landscape and we don't have memory or communication, then we will wander. However, hope springs eternal, and the idea that we could make sense of the systems landscape, potentially using the kind of overarching frameworks and rigorous work of, I saw George here and others, people who have actually developed systems frameworks. And it's this idea that we could actually use the sense that we have made of the systems landscape to make more sense of the systems landscape and help others do the same through appropriate, not overwhelming or overloading learning experiences. And that would actually help bring quality across all of these aspects of systems education and application, which again, run the gamut from people wanting simply more availability to what's already been done, or more awareness amongst different projects to connect supplies in terms of materials and capacities to demands. All around the world, as educational systems are in turmoil, there are opportunities for millions of people to be experiencing systems education in a totally new way. So that's very exciting. But I wanted to highlight that last slide because it's an example of where knowledge engineering is like building the bridges that education runs on. So we got dropped into the systems landscape. And at some point, we're going to have to start engineering paths and maps to help us make sense of that so we can explore the space better. So the ISSS Knowledge Engineering project has been following very much a similar approach in terms of a bi-weekly meeting that's in an alternating weeks with the education meeting. Also, if anybody like wants to join, but the times of the meetings do not work, then we can find another time. But in general, these meetings tend to be at 19 UTC on Thursdays for now, alternating weeks between education and knowledge engineering. And if somebody wants to participate in that specific time doesn't work, then again, we can find another time. And also people are welcome to be asynchronous contributors, because we are looking for people who want to do specific things or general structuring things, but without multiple individuals deciding to make a difference on the education or knowledge engineering front, then it will be a slow, helpful, but incremental process. So back to knowledge engineering as the kind of information discovery and organizing that undergirds our capacity to carry out education and research. So here, one of the most exciting directions has been working a lot with Peter T. and exploring what resources exist at ISSS. And if you go to the ISSS website and you explore every hyperlink, you'll learn a lot. There's more than enough. But also it's in sometimes a way that's difficult to determine or cross-reference, or a word might be used in a document or a reference or some relevance amongst documents that is apparent upon discovery. However, the indexability or discoverability is low. And so working with Peter to develop maps of the ISSS resource and others on both of these projects. I see multiple people who have come through the meetings here. We're pursuing not the educational paths and programs and initiatives, but rather focusing on specific modular outcomes related to knowledge engineering in terms of what approaches can we use to categorize and index the information that we have available, and what kinds of just like narrow metadata schemes will help us describe, for example, do we have the full text of this file? Do we have the right to distribute this? Is this for members only? Should this be publicly available? And then the much more open and richer challenge of tag-based annotation schemes and the semantic components of knowledge engineering, which are absolutely essential in terms of, again, that indexability and discoverability and determining what resources are relevant for a given query, which is the basis of that education and research aforementioned. So here we also slowly increment along and open space and time for people to contribute their perspectives, the kinds of database and knowledge engineering systems that they have seen work well, or the challenges that have not worked, while we make sense of our inner systems landscape, which is to say the ISSS resources that we already have. And just to kind of look at a recent meeting and example of how that proceeded. This was just several days ago and with David Ng. And we started with many important notes shared on the history of ISSS and of systems. So for those who have been around a longer amount of time, you have many important stories and contexts to share. And for those who are younger, there's a lot to learn. And it's not all just hot takes. Sometimes there's really important narrative context that we only will receive and document by showing up and by listening to those who have more experience. So similarly, we start with just an open opportunity for sharing this different stories and different things that people want to share, which is always relevant. And then go to the classical agenda and try to just scope what threads do we have open? What are we working on right now? Just touch each modular outcome or aspect of what we're doing so that we can make sense of these systems landscapes. And in the end of 2022, which is kind of where we're at over the coming weeks, it would be awesome, and my preference and expectation, that some people would be interested to, on either the education or knowledge engineering fronts, in some way see a synergy with what they're already doing. This doesn't have to be 10 hours a week. It doesn't even have to be 1 hour per week. It could be 1 hour every 2 weeks or per month, or any amount of time that somebody may actually already even be doing a relevant task that can be recontextualized in light of this. Because the VP of Education is not the dean. They're not the course creator. They're not the teacher's assistants. I hope that it's a coordinator role by which people who are engaged in systems education, research, and knowledge engineering tasks, as perhaps in some way we all are, to just connect and hang out. And that could mean a lot. In the end of 22, on both fronts, we will complete this initial phase of making sense of the systems landscape, which is why it was great that I was able to share this in today's theme. And that initial phase of sense making on the knowledge engineering front is looking like assessment of what resources the ISSS has. So if you're someone who's been in the ISSS for a while, then making sure that we have different kinds of resources document would be quite important. Document the resources that we have and their initial locations, potentially fragmented across different kinds of systems, while we explore different approaches to the indexing and discoverability of those resources. For example, MediaWiki or FedWiki, and just really grasping at the different kinds of projects that already have been tried, because a lot has been tried. And so it's too early to rush in anywhere. So on knowledge engineering, understand what we have within ISSS and focus on a few canonical artifacts like yearbooks as examples of complex knowledge documents, which have a lot of content, but often, thank you for the direct message. I will update the playlist link. Have a lot of information included in terms of the people, ideas, and references mentioned. However, they're not always copyable text, and they're not always carried out in terms of the scholarship standards that we would expect today. Not like today's perfect, but at least we have DOIs. Whereas previously, you might only see like a last name in a journal and some other inscrutable information. So that's on the knowledge engineering side. What do we have at ISSS? What are some classical artifacts that represent the kind of challenges that we will need to address in order to meaningfully integrate those kinds of knowledge artifacts into such an engineered system? And then closing and opening to discussion and returning to education. During this closing bit of 2022, the goal is to keep the door open and welcome as many people who want to be involved in contributing to systems education, whether they see one of these aspects that resonate with them, or whether they want to just add another word, insert your favorite word there, just some area of attention that you want to take ownership over or that you want to catalyze is really what needs to happen. So now we can just talk. I can share more information as people see fit, but just wanted to, for the remainder of the time as Roland sees fit, to hear from anybody who wants to share thoughts or questions on education or knowledge engineering.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for this talk, but that's not what I want to thank you for. Thank you for the hours and hours and hours you have invested in this project already, and for all your helpers. I see a lot of names there frequently. Peter, thank you, everybody that's involved with this. I think this is a very, very meaningful way to take the ISSS forward for a long time in the future. I'm not going to over moderate this. Can I ask people just to raise their hand? I can just say that if I raise my hand, just please finish your sentence and then give me a chance again. That's a way of kind of interrupting on a nice way. So thank you. Anybody, any comments? You can just raise your hands. Daniel, it seems that you have them silent at this stage. I have
Dennis.
It's Dennis raising his hand in the absence of anyone else. It was the youth one at the end that I was particularly wanting to focus on, because I think that it's something which we talk about a lot, but I'm not sure that we have really made very much progress on that particular topic. For a period of time, we started to get a lot more doctoral students involved, but people are also, I know people like Kerry Turner, for example, are interested in getting into schools and so on and so forth. So I think it would be worth exploring that, and perhaps getting someone like Kerry to come and say what, if anything, she's managed to achieve and where she's hoping to get with that.
Thank you. Awesome. Noted. James?
Daniel, I am thrilled at what you've been working on and accomplishing. It's a very, very important, necessary thing. I'll second what was just said about going for the youth. I hope it's along the way that what will eventually be developed also will be a set of educational planning criteria, so that it'll be, you'll identify how to teach to the very young as compared to as people become more inured and accepted to understanding systems as both as something intuitively recognized, and then with specific skills as they're given different areas to explore on their own, and to make this an expanded growing application field, even up towards graduate and postgraduate different focuses and ways of approaching things. So thank you for all this great effort you're doing. Really, really critically important. Very appreciated.
Thank you. Also, just one helpful heuristic, and then Beverly, that has kind of arisen out of these discussions. Like, there's many ways to slice the situation to make sense of the systems landscape, but sometimes I think about it in terms of like beginning, middle, and third of a lifelong journey. So there are things that we can right now be bringing to those in the latter third of their journey, those with systems experience who have so much to share, and those who maybe have been in systems in their whole life, and maybe they're in upper management today, but they're not yet exposed to systems ideas. So there's people in that area. In the middle of the journey is the broad basin of professionalism and service, upskilling and reskilling, connections and networking, and just there's a lot of opportunities in that. And then just thinking about the early education, ranging from, I don't know, what toys are on the ground for 3-year-old larvae, or what could be integrated as a 1-hour activity for 12-year-olds. There's just many opportunities. And like, we can prepare the field for when there is going to be a school teacher joining who says, I do have the classroom where that can be implemented, or I have a colleague in this country and they're looking to template this.
To use Peter's word of literacy, there's a way of hopefully implanting what will become instinctive systems literacy ways of thinking in the new generations as we go along.
Yes, and so there's so much that can be done with those in the latter and the middle of the journey. However, I think many people believe, and I tend to agree, that when systems literacy is fluent and generational, then system science will look different than it does today.
From your mouth to God's ears.
We hope. Beverly?
Yes, hi. Thank you. I was curious about the world of the topic of cities. You ran through a list of topics, and I had turned my head or something. I either it was there and I didn't see it, or it was not there and I was just imagining it. And I would appreciate your thoughts on including cities, but in particular, the world of smart cities. I'm just finishing my second PhD actually in smart cities, and I've been looking specifically at the role projects play in contributing to quality of life. And I and colleagues in this space are very much, like in the last year, on the threshold of wanting to develop curriculum in that space. And I think I'll probably get a lot of agreement with participants of this call when I say that, you know, the world of a city is one of the most complex and creative and frustrating and inspiring you know, systems out there. And this threshold we feel that we're on to develop curriculum from a systems point of view is something I would very much like to put on, to at least propose putting on the table. And I would appreciate your response, your thoughts, anyone's thoughts on what I just said. Thank you.
Awesome. I will follow up with you on the specifics if you would like. But yes.
Sure. Could I?
Yeah, good. Just the city continuum manifold / paradigm is everything. Each one of these come together in the city.
Exactly. And I decided to, a few years ago, redirect my own PM research career to a more, what I think is more socially responsible direction and looking at cities. And what I see is an inherently optimistic area of study that is so very much happening in real time. And the research world could benefit from understanding city development and work together to develop curriculum for, you know, the next generation of project managers, for example. So I just wanted to put that on the, as I say, the radar of this group. And that from what you just said, it sounds like it would have a home here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
For CODA access, just email education@ISSS with the email that you want access to. Just say, I would like access to the education and/or knowledge engineering, and then I'll add you for sure. And if anybody wants to be added to calendar events, similarly, just education@ISSS.org. Jesse?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is Jesse. I'm sorry I'm so late. I ran into several blocks on the site that I couldn't log in following the normal procedures. But I did find this link in the email, which I was very grateful to receive belatedly. Yeah, I think that because Gerald Migley has made a life career of teaching observation and learning about natural systems in context, and so have I, that should be included. I still have a very difficult time getting included in ISSS discussions because of the lack of models, that because it's a Rosen type of phenomena. Natural systems are indeterminate in their behavior because they're emerging in time. And so it's a different kind of learning and study. And I've written 2 long, excellent papers for ISSS and have gotten no discussion of them really at all. And I got appreciation for my pointing out that language itself is in context knowledge. The practical language, at least, is in context knowledge of systems that accumulated over centuries. And I think this is essential to be part of the relevant world, since what we have problems with are in context systems that we don't study. We only study theoretical ones so far in the main field. And we really need to have another tree of knowledge here, and would like to ask for that.
Yes, thank you. Send all relevant resources so that your asynchronous previous contributions can be documented and understood. And feel free
Where
to
would I
join
send them?
to education@ISSS.org.
Education. Okay.
Yeah. So everybody's welcome to send messages, of course, and to join, and hopefully just think of it like a fun incremental office hours, or just a space again to provide context for those who have a lot of experience in the systems world. But even 100 lifetimes is not the end of the story. So everybody is there to provide something and to learn something. And so that's the plan.